Today we are tasting the beer you guys have been waiting for. This is the beer that made Milwaukee famous, Schlitz.
You want to take away my Schlitz?
Hey, whoa! Give me 6 Schlitz to...
We're carrying precious cargo.
Hey, Bill, where can a guy get another Schlitz around here? And excuse me, Bill?
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the House Brewing Company YouTube channel, where from time to time we look at regional beers across America, give you their history, and then give you our thoughts as to whether or not they're worthy of your hard-earned dollars. The story of Schlitz begins in 1849, beginning with a young German immigrant by the name of August Krug. He opened one of the first small breweries in Milwaukee, and he began brewing lagers at a time when ales dominated the landscape in America. Krug built himself a little beer empire, but sadly, in 1856, an accident happened at the brewery. So unfortunately, Krug did pass away when he sustained really bad injuries after falling through a manway. This is where Joseph Schlitz comes in. Joseph was the bookkeeper at the time, and he took over operations. Not only did he take over operations of the business, but he actually wound up marrying Krug's widow, which is an important part of the story. Stay tuned. So fast forward to the 1870s. Innovation and growth was big for Schlitz, and it was one of the first to the game on refrigerated train cars. Most breweries were still slinging local drafts, but Schlitz, they were actually shipping cold beer across the country as one of the first. Americans started drinking Schlitz anywhere and everywhere they could get their hands on it. Enter the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. This fire wiped out breweries all over the city, and Schlitz stepped in and decided to ship free beer to help the city rebuild, keep morale up, and keep taverns operating. This sunk in with people. They remembered it. From this point on, Milwaukee became known as the beer capital of America, and Schlitz actually became the beer of Chicago, a market that still means a lot for Schlitz all the way here today in 2025. So unfortunately, accidents continued to plague the young brewery, and Joseph Schlitz died on May 7, 1875. He was aboard the steamship the SS Schiller, returning from Germany when it struck a rock near the Isles of Scilly in thick fog and sank. His body was never recovered. So from this point, the brewery was passed on to the Uline brothers. The Ulines were actually relatives of Anna Maria Uline, whom Schlitz had married and was the original widow of August Krug. What a tangled web we weave. So by the early 1900s, Schlitz had become one of the largest breweries in the United States. They built the famous Schlitz Palm Garden, which is basically a beer palace, and they sponsored events, music halls, and much of civic life at the time. Schlitz became a beer that defined the era. Budweiser, they were actually still trying to claw their way at the top when Schlitz was all over the place, fresh and delicious. If you guys are fans of the channel, you know what comes next. Prohibition hits, federal government shuts down beer. Schlitz, like many breweries, had to pivot, and their particular pivot was malt syrups, soda, chocolate, near beer. So coming out of Prohibition, unlike several rivals, they came out of Prohibition stronger than ever. Remember, they're already the #1 beer in America, and they're getting stronger. And their own personal peak came after World War II, when what America wanted was cold beer and a good time. This is when Schlitz reached its peak. They sponsored radio shows, sports, television. They seemingly invented the modern kind of like beer brand all over the place playbook with mass marketing, mass distribution, and really taking things over. By the 1950s, Schlitz was the #1 beer in America, but unfortunately, like all good things, they come to an end. After the roaring 50s and 60s, the fall for Schlitz began in the early 1970s when greedy executives decided to try and make the beer faster and cheaper. They decided to cut corners. They changed the recipe, they swapped out malt for corn syrup solids, and they used additives to speed fermentation. Their customers noticed. The flavor dropped. By 1981, sales had collapsed. Schlitz closed plants and becomes responsible for the biggest brewery layoff in American history. 6,000 people lose their jobs in a single day. Later that year, the Stroh Brewery came in and bought Schlitz for pennies on the dollar. So after Stroh's bought the company, not a lot happened until 1999. The Stroh's brand passed ownership over to Pabst Brewing Company, and then in 2008, something glorious happened. They brought back the original Schlitz recipe, the classic old formula. Schlitz returned to bars, especially in the Midwest. So is that enough to put it back on top? Absolutely not. But, in Milwaukee, In Wisconsin, in the Midwest, Schlitz remains an American classic with much history behind it. In many ways, it's a cautionary tale not to cut corners, especially when you're on top. That's a good time to double down on quality and take it to the next level. All right, wow, what a history. For you guys watching in Wisconsin and the Midwest, give me your own Schlitz stories in the comments. That's a crazy history. We had death, we had potential betrayals. I don't know, Michael and I, we're not sure if, because Joseph wound up marrying August's wife, and the question is, did August have an accident in the tank, or was he pushed into the tank?
I'm Lester Holt, and this is Dateline.
History will never know. Perhaps somebody out there has the legend. But anyway, we're going to taste this classic, and as I so often do, I'm first going to comment on the design of the can, and then we're going to dive right into it. So here we have Schlitz, an American classic in a 16-ounce can. Like many of these wonderful macro lagers, we have this sort of like red, white, and gold motif with a little bit of blue in here. Beautiful can, very simple. It's the same on the back as it is on the front. The can doesn't tell you too much about it. Joseph Schlitz Brewing Company, St. Louis, Missouri. And that's it. There's not much else to see here. I mean, we have like Schlitz Worldwide kind of thing, established in 1849. And other than that, we don't know too much about this beer based on the label. We know that it's 4.6% alcohol. We know that it's 1 pint. We know that we should please recycle. And that's it. Let's see how she tastes. As I so often like to do, the condition of this beer, how old it is, where Michael picked it up for the video is really important to the taste outcome. Michael, what do we know about how we got this beer?
Total wine dead.
Total wine, dead of mass. Warm on the floor. Warm on the floor. We do not have Best Buy codes. We have, we have January of 26. So oftentimes these Best Buy dates are 6 months in the future from the date of packaging. So this beer is probably about 3 or 4 months old at this point, if I had to guess. Warm on the floor here in Massachusetts. Pours a beautiful yellow color into the glass. Hey, if you guys enjoy this content, do us a favor and subscribe. We do know that 70% of people who watch are not subscribers, and doing so, make sure you don't miss anything. So thank you for that. Here we have a beautiful filtered yellow color in the glass. Strangely, it doesn't look as effervescent as a lot of these beers look in the tasting. I usually see a lot of bubbles emanating from the bottom of the glass, but in this particular example, I don't. Beautiful white head, very, very light color, very, very light. Even in comparison to other comparable macro lagers, that has a golden yellow appearance, which looks really, really nice. Aroma, crisp, clean. I like the aroma. Decidedly macro. Okay. These macro lagers are funny because they're all so different. Also the same in many different ways. They're either a little bit sweet or they're a little bit dry or they have a little bit of hop character. But in many ways, they kind of all blend together. This particular beer is not conspicuous in any ways that surprise me. It has a little bit of apple character. It has a little bit of sweetness. I would say that it's slightly drier than I expected. Sometimes these macro lagers, especially if they're made with corn, I don't know if this is or it isn't, but if they're made with corn, they can have kind of a residual sweetness that lingers on the palate if they're made with rice or some other adjunct. This is crispy. It's pretty clean. Very little hop character. I do get the sense that as it warms up, that apple character, that kind of like fermentation flaw, is going to continue to get worse and worse. So if I was drinking Schlitz, I would want to drink it ice cold. I certainly wouldn't want this to warm up in the glass. I'd probably want it in a 12-ounce can because 16 ounces is going to warm up too much, and by the end of it, it's probably not going to taste that great. But let's see if we get anything else. Yeah, there's just like, it's perfectly good. There's no off characters. There's no oxidation. It's a well-made beer that is resilient in the can because it was sourced warm on the ground. But there's, I mentioned that there's subtle differences between all these macro lagers, but they're so nondescript that it's really hard for them to stand out. And for Schlitz, for me, based on the beers I've tasted previously on the channel, it falls into that really sort of like undistinguished generic macro lager flavor profile versus something like Labatt's, which we found to be a little bit hoppy and had a little bit of character to it, and something like Hamm's, which also had a little bit more grain and hop character to it. So that's what I think on Schlitz. I don't have any other thoughts, guys. Of course, if you have your own Schlitz history, leave your thoughts below in the comments. As always, I want to thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.